Hello and welcome into the Roots Up podcast. This is Riley Maletsky. Today we have a shorter, compact episode, but it's going to be a fun one for sure. It's me and Northern Tim rocking with you today, and we're going to discuss the new grassroots soccer media rankings that creates a fun debate, and then we'll talk about last weekend's matches and preview this weekend's games. And while you're at it, make sure you're following us on Twitter at RootsUpPod. You can find all of our latest news, updates, conversations around the podcast on Twitter. And then later on in the episode, we'll talk about some kits and some other news tidbits. All right, so we have a new little addition to the Twitter sphere, the lower division Twitter world, and it's this grassroots soccer media group. I am a part of this group, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to rank the best lower division teams, and they're including the Founders Cup, NPSL, USL League 2, UPSL, and then the regional leagues. And then they're also having some other member goals they have, doing stuff outside of the rankings they're trying to accomplish. It's an interesting concept, and the ranking part draws a lot of attention. I'm going to go through their first week's rankings and discuss them. This isn't necessarily something to look at and gauge how good of a team is on, but I think it's an interesting talking point for podcasts like this, and it creates discussion more than anything else. So they have at number 1 the New York Cosmos. Strong start in NPSL. They got a big win and the first round of the U.S. Open Cup. Makes sense. By the way, these rankings were before the U.S. Open Cup games in the second round. So New York Cosmos at 1, makes sense. FC Golden State have been strong in the NPSL West Coast all year. I probably wouldn't have had them number 2 because I don't think the level of competition out west NPSL is as great of magnitude, but they've played more games. They have more games under their belt to judge. I'm fine with them at 2. Orange County FC, again, strong West Coast team. They had a huge Open Cup win, and this wasn't counted in this week's rankings, but they actually upset USL League, USL Championship side, Orange County SC. And then they have the Florida Soccer Soldiers at number 4, who are undefeated in the UPSL, and they beat Miami FC in the first round. This is where I start to disagree a little bit in the rankings, and here's my opinion. I think when you're ranking teams league to league, you have to rank them not just on the win and loss column. You can't look at that because that's not comparable. If this was the NFL and there's 32 teams in the league and all the teams play each other, or Major League Baseball where literally all the teams play each other each season, you can get a grasp of ranking based on wins and losses, right? And maybe a few other factors, injuries and stuff. But power rankings look very similar to the league standings in Major League Baseball or the NFL or the NBA or leagues like that, or even MLS if we're going to stick with soccer. But when we're ranking different leagues that are different calibers to each other, you have to take into a few other things into account. You have to take into account the style of play. If you're sitting back and playing like Colorado and parking the bus and sitting 11 men behind the ball, I do not think you are a better team than someone that plays a fluid style of attacking and actually plays soccer, because it takes 2 teams to play soccer. One team can't park the bus and the other team play soccer and there's a soccer game on the field. That's not how it works. That's just keep away at that point. So you have to look at the style of play. You have to look at the eye test. The eye test is one of the most important key features. I think goal differential is important to an extent. I don't think Miami FC's 10-0 win over a team that had 17 ineligible players means a lot. You have to look at goal differential, to look at style of play. You have to look at the eye test is the most important thing. You have to judge that mixed with wins and losses, mixed with who you're playing, the caliber of teams in the league, and take that all into account and come up with which team is better. So when we're looking at that, the UPSL is not on the same level as the NPSL. I think some regional leagues are stronger competition-wise than the UPSL. That's an argument I'll get into in a different podcast. I'm keeping it a little bit simple today, but I'm taking UPSL success for what it is, a grain of salt. You can't compare that success in the NPSL or the Founders Cup or USL League 2. So yes, the Soccer Soldiers have had success in the UPSL. And that means something. It doesn't mean a lot, though, to me. Their win against Miami FC were the better team in that match. You cannot make a legit argument and say that Florida Soccer Soldiers were the better team on the pitch in that Miami FC game. They got lucky a lot. They really did. Miami FC dominated that game, dominated possession. Florida Soccer Soldiers hung in there. They kept it. They kept it a puncher's chance. They kept it within distance. They made the right plays at the right time. But you saw breakaway speed when they countered. Miami FC was right with them. Ball handling.
I made this argument not that long ago that some sides are very good at knockout games, and that's kind of how they play their entire season.
Mm-hmm. I agree. In a one-off knockout game, you can get away with not being the better team. The ball's gonna bounce, man. This is soccer. This is sport. This is not an on-paper game. This is not Football Manager 819, whatever year it is now. This is not a video game. This is the ball bounces in weird ways, and you can set yourself up in position in knockout games to get a result. Florida Soccer Soldiers did not get a win against Miami FC. They did advance. They did not get a win. Let's take it for what it was. They got a draw because they sat back a little bit and got lucky. They played well when they were given the opportunity, but they weren't out there attacking Miami FC's throat, right? We can't say that is a huge win for them. That's a huge advancement for them. So putting them at number 4 because they tied with Miami FC in a knockout tournament, I don't think that's reasonable whatsoever. Tim, do you agree with that? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts on the Florida Soccer Soldiers at number 4?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of power rankings in general, especially when, as you say, when they go across leagues like that. And I'm completely with you on the fact that UPSL, well, bluntly, UPSL sides in the Open Cup, if you're using the Open Cup as the benchmark, and we're not, because these rankings came out before the Open Cup. But
the first round of the Open Cup was part of the benchmark.
Those sides don't get in because of the UPSL. They get in because of the USASA affiliation. So, yeah, it is. It's kind of strange to take into account UPSL performances and equate them as the same as other leagues. And it's not just UPSL. I don't know how you factor it in. I don't know how you factor the different leagues, whether they need to show their working, to use an old math phrase, and say, okay, we have these rankings because this league is worth, like people used to say, it was easier to score goals in Portugal than in England, so the Portuguese league, the top goal scorer in Portugal didn't count the same. Yeah, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, Joseph Martinez, what did he score? 34 goals last year? Something like that?
Yeah.
His goals per game, because England plays a few more games than MLS, but his goals per game was a little bit above the English Premier League Golden Boot last year. People weren't saying he was a better striker than the English Premier League Golden Boot winner. No one was saying that. They were equating the level of play and saying Joseph Martinez had a great season in MLS. He's a good player. He's not the best player in the Premier League, though. He's a solid player, but you can't compare a season like that to a season in a much gruesome, much more competitive league like the NPSL. All right, rounding off the top 5, you have International FC. International is another one of the teams that they've gotten 2 wins. They only played 2 games in NPSL. One of them was a weird monsoon of a game against Atlanta SC where their first goal, the ball went through the goalkeeper's hands. just the rest were just off corner kicks. It was a monsoon rain. You take absolutely nothing from that match. If you're looking on Twitter, you see, oh, they got a 4-1 win, their NPSL opener. I'm going to rank them here. Okay, if you watch that game means nothing. That game means absolutely zilch in rankings. You can't take anything from that match. They go and play Asheville. Asheville City SC dominated, hit the post 4 times. Should have had 4 or 5 goals. International get an 86-minute lucky goal.
I think maybe you need to have a rule where you don't enter a team before the first 5 games of their season have gone by or something, so that you've got an idea of whether they are actually any good.
I think the problem with that is we'd have UPSL teams or NPSL West Coast teams for the first, I don't know, month and a half of soccer of the NPSL season, and then people aren't going to let NPSL teams or USL League 2 teams into the rankings because they say, well, the number 15 team did nothing to deserve to lose. They won again the UPSL. They can't help but win because the competition's so sucky, you know?
Yeah.
It's weird. People, unfortunately, when we're ranking these things, it seems to be a popularity contest at times, more than it's what we want it to be, more than what it really is. Because if what it really should be, if we're ranking the top 25 best teams, it's USL League 2 and NPSL teams only. All the Founders Cup teams first. They're the best 8, 10 teams, whatever it is in Founders Cup. Then some NPSL and USL League 2 teams, maybe one UPSL or USASA team. But if we're honest, truly ranking these as the best teams, that's what it's going to be, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so after that, I'm going to go to the top 10 and then talk about some interesting choices in the rest of the rankings. Number 6, we have Miami FC. I'm good with Miami FC at 6. That's a solid choice. Number 7, AFC Ann Arbor. They got a 3-1 win to open up their NPSL season. FC Arizona at 9. I skipped over Cal FC. They're at 8. They're again on the UPSL, and they have one first place vote. The Miami United FC at 10. I'm good with FC Arizona and Miami United. Hartford City FC at 11. I was the one that ranked them at first place. I didn't change my rankings after their loss. I still think it's very impressive that they have started out the season so hot, and they won 6-0 on a Saturday and played the next day on Sunday and won 3-0. That's very impressive to me, and I think that means something. Those are very competitive games. One was against Boston City FC, too, which is a team they tied 3-3 to open their season. They get a 6-0 win against them. I think you take that draw away. Because they won 6-0 the next week against Boston City on the road too. It wasn't even like they won 6-0 at home. You know, they went on the road for that. So that was big for me. I think Hartford City, the loss did hurt, but I still think they're a solid top 10 team. You can knock Cal FC off or Florida Soccer Soldiers. Then Greenville FC is at 12. They did get their first win in NPS. Only have one game under the belt, but they look pretty solid. Maybe not top. No, maybe not at number 12, but I think they do deserve a spot in the top 25. I'm going to skip over some interesting ones. Villages SC at 15, Lakeland Tropics at 17. The Villages and Tropics, only games they've played each other were in USL League 2. Oh, not USL League 2, excuse me, sorry, the Open Cup, the first round. And it was a draw. So the fact that they're both ranked after their first game was just a draw, and the Villages SC were ranked above them because they won a penalty shootout doesn't really make sense to me. Lakeland Tropics were clearly the better team there. You can't really make an argument for that. I think Lakeland should be ahead of them. Detroit City and Chattanooga are both ranked, and they've not played a competitive match yet. Please explain that to me. They're both ranked, have not played a competitive match yet.
That doesn't make any sense to me, no.
Chattanooga FC won 10-0 against a Gulf Coast Premier League side, a mediocre Gulf Coast Premier League side. And then they won a close game against a team that's not playing a competitive league this year. They're on hiatus from a league and Bug Eaters. And they have a loss, too, in their preseason. They lost against the Guatemalan team. So they're 2-1, and their 2 wins were against a team that's not playing competitive soccer this year and a mediocre Gulf Coast Premier League team, and you rank them at 23. That makes zero sense. We don't even know their roster yet.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I mean, it's up to the alliance to make their rules, but I wouldn't put teams' results in exhibition games. I don't see how that works at all if your basic premise is to compare different leagues.
Yeah,
Quality.
even if we were going to allow preseason results to matter, their preseason results aren't worthy enough to be in the top 25. Again, they lost a game. They won 10-0 against a mediocre Gold Coast Premier League team, and they won against a team that's playing non-competitive matches. A good team playing non-competitive matches, but still a team playing non-competitive matches. And that roster that was playing those games were trialists. They weren't even a team.
I mean, there's a college basketball parallel here. Like this year, they had this idea of quad 1 wins, where if basically the better team you beat, the more it counted for your ranking. And I think that's kind of the point. If you're playing against bad sides, then playing against bad sides with a half-finished roster is a kind of weird benchmark to use for the quality of your team.
Yeah. I do like that. I do like that. And I think if we were to attribute that to this, we'd also have to have some asterisks and say, what was it, a quality win? Did they play well in the win? You know, what other attributes what other things attributed to that win? You know, injuries, weather, weird calls, stuff like that. A lot of things you have to think about there, but I do like the premise of that idea. I thought it was interesting. One other thing I'm going to know is I did not vote this, by the way. This was not me, surprisingly. I voted for, I think, the number 25 spot for the Georgia Revolution NPSL team. Probably didn't deserve it. That was my bad. I will admit that they did not deserve that 25 spot, and that was kind of just, I thought we looked good in the loss, and I like this team. I follow them. Yeah, so that was kind of an unrealistic, but the rest of my votes I thought were pretty realistic. But the ADASL reserve side for Georgia Revolution, who won the ADASL First Division, got 3 votes, and the NPSL team got 1. That's pretty funny.
That is funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a good 17 minutes of rankings talk. Rankings that mean absolutely nothing. Just so.
Well, you know, the joy of just beating something up for not making any sense.
Yeah. I think my point with this is one, it's a fun conversation. You know, I mean, it really is a fun conversation. And 2, I think it'll clear the air a little bit on what these rankings, what purpose they serve in the lower division realm. It's kind of like a logo voting competition. I think they have a similar worth.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comparison. Yeah.
And this is someone that takes logo, or at least took one logo competition very seriously, of the Soccer Roundtable Logo Cup, which I did run. So I do take those things a little seriously, and I think this honestly has about the same worth as that. But let's talk about some games last weekend. Some interesting results. You want to talk about your trip to Minneapolis and the Fusion's game against Minneapolis City?
Yeah, sure. Let's just. I'm not going to be making too many road trips. That was a mammoth a mammoth lot of traveling. But I said this on social media. I was grateful for the hospitality because I sat next to the Minneapolis City guys and didn't get any stick from them whilst my team was losing. So it's also just kind of interesting to see games from the away perspective when it isn't all your people around you. And so I enjoyed that. And as for the game itself, well, that was City pretty much showing the strength that they have. And I don't know, it was close. My gut reaction to it was that it was pretty much a fair result. City didn't deserve a clean sheet, and Fusion didn't deserve to win. So I think it probably ended up a fair result, although maybe 2-1 was closer than Fusion deserved. There was a missed penalty, after all, at 0-0 that would have put Fusion ahead. And Matt Elder looked a little bit uneasy in his early season form, so I'm guessing they'll hope that he will get more comfortable again.
What was the attendance like? What did the attendance look like for Minneapolis City?
That's a good question. It looked like a pretty solid crowd again. I couldn't give you a figure, but they always get good attendance there. They had a club night going on. So Minneapolis United, I believe, the youth club, they were encouraging Minneapolis United people to turn up. Not that they need to do that in order to get good attendance, but it was a pretty solid crowd. I was in the press box, so my perspective on it is a little bit shielded by the fact that I couldn't really see the crowd from where I was. I was looking straight down on the field. But yeah, they looked like a pretty solid crowd and as I said, they had a club night going on, something that they're doing all season long. Like the game tonight was a club night, ironically enough, for a club that's running a WPSL squad this season. I say ironically, they don't compete in the WPSL. I just found it kind of an interesting contrast. Salvo SC are running a WPSL side, and their youth side were being encouraged to turn up to Minneapolis City's game tonight against the illustrious Aris Lacrosse.
And some other matchups last week in Atlantic City. FC get a big 4-1 win over Westchester United. Tulsa Athletic and FC Wichita playing the game of the week. This match in Tulsa, and narrow field, narrow pitch. We know what the field looks like. It's a city park, so it's very bumpy. And FC Wichita's keeper Mark Weir made a tremendous save, that Mike Kojo save of the week actually, to keep them in the game, and it ended up 0-0. But a competitive match. Ball went both ways, played pretty well, fun to watch. And yeah, Mark Weir really took 3 points away from Tulsa. And then Kingston Stockade get a big 1-0 win. Miami United FC continue their dominance in the Sunshine Conference, the 5-1 win over the Central Florida Panthers. Orange County FC, who got a huge Open Cup win, also got a 3-1 win in the NPSL play. And then the match I attended, or I didn't attend, but I had my eye on, was the Georgia Revolution Atlanta SC Atlanta Derby. And you can hear my uncut 53-minute breakdown of that game and absolute ripping of the Georgia Revolution FC performance on the Revs Live podcast, which should be available the same time this podcast is, which is Saturday morning. Wow, this is a tough game to break down. Georgia Revolution FC dominated the first half. They really did. They played better. They had their first goal was given up because our winger was out with a concussion or playing a man down for a few minutes. Bad pass by our left back. Basically, we're dominating possession, and our left back and our right back like to get up, right? We don't have a holding midfielder, so all of our midfield plays up. We're very vulnerable on the flanks, and bad decision by our left back turnover, and they just attacked the flanks, countered very quickly. Atlanta SC, to their credit, are a very, very quick side, and they got a goal. Same thing happened later in the match. Georgia Revolutionary struggled on set pieces. Actually got 3 set piece goals. All 3 of their goals were on set pieces, but ended up 5-3. The last goal was a crap goal. It was just we sent everyone forward, even the goalkeeper, and they got a turnover and just shot it in the back of the net as time expired. Nothing special there. It's really a 4-3 game that got out of hand. But what really hurt was Atlanta SC was a man down and scored 3 goals. They scored 3 goals because the back line was unorganized and not well coached, to be honest. The back line didn't know what they were doing. It was 3 goals with a man advantage because our left back, Augie Hirsch, made poor decisions, and because we have a lack of a holding midfielder. Those 3 things contribute to a bad loss. Honestly, we have a very talented back line. They just don't have good communication. We need a better left back, and we need a holding midfielder. Those 3 things get worked out. Georgia Revolution FC will win a lot of games this year, and they will go far into the playoffs. They just need to iron out those kinks before it's too late.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier, like a minute ago about Minneapolis City. I think backline communication is one of those things that takes a couple of games to get into line, even if you're the best or the best skilled side in the division.
Yeah, it's hard when the guys don't practice together and they come in, practice 3 or 4 times, play a game for a few months, and that's about it. So it's hard to get that chemistry with so little time on the pitch together. I understand why it's a problem, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And then FC Motown lose 3-1 to Philadelphia Lone Star in a very intriguing match. 2 teams that are gaining a lot of traction. FC Motown was a very good side last season, and Philly Lone Star were outed in the U.S. Open Cup after a controversial offside call, but they do get a big win to bounce back in NPSL play. Fort Worth Vaqueros, their first game of the season, get a 3-0 win over Tyler FC, and Michael Hitchcock's team, Fort Worth Vaqueros, his other team, Denton Diablos, their game is postponed due to the amount of water on the field. So their home opener is going to be next week. Then Greenville FC and Asheville City play a 2-2 game in the Carolina Classico. Fun game. Hartford City, as I mentioned earlier, had a huge 5-2 loss to Brooklyn Italians. Brooklyn's a team to watch this year for sure. Jacksonville Armada surprisingly lose 7-0 to Miami FC. That is something no one saw coming. Jacksonville has no interest in being in the NPSL right now. And honestly, they're a club that if something doesn't happen with NISA or Founders Cup this year, I'm expecting them to fold. I really am. I think they're running out of options at the moment.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, the whole professional landscape thing with the multitude of different options for professional sides. So you don't think they would go USL then?
No, not at all. That is a route that their owner does not have any interest in going.
So yeah, they're in the NISA Founders Cup kind of mold, and it will be interesting to see if the expansion / kind of permanent version of the Founders Cup gives them a route out of that then.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And then AFC Ann Arbor got a 1-1 draw with Kalamazoo. That hurts AFC Ann Arbor's rankings, as we were talking about earlier, as they don't have much to go on. They have a 2-1 win and a 1-1 draw, and they were ranked 12th. So we'll either see them plummet out of the rankings, or because people are afraid to let them drop, it'll be basically the same and just treading water. Detroit City get a 1-0 win over Michigan Stars FC. Little Rock Rangers get a bounce back 3-1 win over Ozark, and Ozark's obviously not a very good team. That's kind of their reputation. So kind of that padding of the schedule there after a tough season opener against Tulsa in Tulsa. Tulsa Athletic play at 2 p.m. on Saturday against Ozark FC. I'm expecting a big win for Tulsa. Easier game for them. FC Golden State are playing City of Angels FC. That's an interesting matchup there. FC Golden State should get the W. The Miami FC as a give me game with Central Florida Panthers FC. Let's play the game of how many goals they can score. They put 10 up earlier in the season. They put 7 up against Jacksonville Armada. Central Florida Panthers, not a strong side. They could put 7, 8 up again. We have Boston City playing the Brooklyn Italians in what probably should be the game of the week after Brooklyn knocked off Hartford, and Boston City did hang with Hartford in that first match up to a 3-3 draw. Then your team, Dakota Fusion FC, played Duluth. That's a tough game. That is a very tough game to go from Indianapolis to Duluth, two very good sides.
Yeah, it is. I've made this comment before. I forget whether it was on this podcast or not, but harsh start to the season. Minneapolis City away and then Duluth at home. Probably not going to make it down there myself. I have a spinal headache. I would Google that because it's not fun. And in the absence of my attendance there, though, I'm still going to be keeping an eye on it. And yeah, it is very much a tough matchup. Duluth apparently have their full roster together now as well, which they didn't for at least according to the reports that I've read for the first couple of games. So that's even more of a tough challenge. You've got the defending regional champions with their full roster. I don't really know what to think about Fusion, although we seem to have some momentum going for us, and I know that the guy who scored the consolation in the Minneapolis City game is very much up for the challenge of scoring more goals. The question would be whether we can keep Duluth out at the other end.
Yeah, it'll be a game to watch. And then mine, Georgia Revolution FC, are hosting International. What's a must-win match for the Revolution? I talk about that more in depthly on the Revs Live podcast. Make sure you check that out. Denton Diablos and one of the matches I'm going to be stay tuned to. They have a 7 p.m. kickoff against their rival Fort Worth Arqueros, and the Denton Diablos are hosting, and it's their first ever match, so it's going to be exciting. I'm expecting a very, very good atmosphere. It's the Michael Hitchcock Derby. His two teams are squaring off, and they're not too far from each other, so it should be a good traveling supporters group from Fort Worth. And then some kits did drop this week. We had Detroit City's kits. They move away from the Lyft sponsor to one of their local breweries. I think changing sponsors hurts the kit level. I thought Lyft looked really, really good in the kit. What do you think about that move, Tim?
Yeah, I've read some of their, leaving aside for a moment my own personal opinion of it, which is that I've never been as big a fan of Detroit City's kits as their fans apparently are. I saw some of their most diehard supporters not that convinced about their new kits. That they like Stroh's as a brewery, but they didn't particularly like the kits. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. And then FC Wichita, and I guess some controversy, not really controversy, but interesting decision, I would say, as they go with the local Chevy dealership as their kit sponsor. And let's be honest, this is a Manchester United kit with the FC Wichita logo on it.
Let me just have a look at that.
And I will say it looked very good on camera. I was expecting it to. The red with the gold Chevy logo, it looks very sharp, but you really thought it was Manchester United. That's all that was in your head the entire match.
Yeah, you can't really get away from that comparison given the obvious association of sponsor and club there. Yeah, also, to be fair to Wichita, it happens to be their color scheme, but yeah, how can you not have that effect or that particular association?
Yeah, again, this is a simple episode, keeping it short and sweet, going over just a few topics. We'll dive more in depthly, hopefully next week, when Johnny Freedom, who's on a flight right now, and Kaiser Stalling, who's at a youth tournament, I believe, are back available. But before we go, I want to mention Bug Eaters. They link up with Huddersfield Town in England as a partner for their youth program. So a very interesting partnership, and it's cool to see Great Plains Premier League sides getting links up with English teams. I know that's Jonathan Colarella's his own doing. He took a trip to England. He owns some teams there. He pulls some strings. Got a cool partnership there. Good for the Bug Eaters. Looking forward to seeing that. But it's been a little bit of a dry week in the lower divisions.
Yeah, Jonathan Colarella's side in England in the lower leagues is only like really, really short traveling distance from Huddersfield. So I'm sure he was
only a few points off from promotion as well.
Oh, right. That's interesting.
Yeah, I heard him say he might bring his goalkeeper from the Bug Eaters and transfer him to his English side for the last few games.
Yeah. Bradford Park Avenue. But yeah, Bradford and Huddersfield are basically in the same metro. So that doesn't massively shock me that he went there for. They're also a really historic club, Huddersfield Town. They won the league a few times back in the ye olden days. So it's one of those things where just getting the name will get some recognition as well.
Yeah, and that's something that they're very good at, the recognition.
That's true.
Very good at getting that.
Well, both ways round. Getting Huddersfield associated with Bug Eaters will get Bug Eaters some exposure in England, and getting Bug Eaters associated with Huddersfield will presumably make some people, at least the history-focused people. And after all, Bug Eaters itself is a history reference. So I'm sure they're well aware of the history of Huddersfield Town. But yeah, anyway, just a little ramble.
Yeah, it's been a fun episode. We'll be back at hopefully a fuller, longer, more in-depth episode next week with our full cast. But signing off, Riley Maletsky along with Northern Tim, as I think that nickname is kind of sticking.
Yeah, that'll work. No one can ever pronounce my surname, so I'll stick with Northern Tim.
It works, man. Short and sweet, and
yeah.
Everyone knows who you are. But Roots Up Podcast signing off. Good night.
Night.